Welcome to r/JustNoHOA, where people tell stories about their crazy homeowner associations. And without any further ado, let's dive right into the stories. Dad passed away. His condo HOA sent me a nasty letter since I am not 55 plus. My dad passed away unexpectedly last spring and I was the executor of his estate. My mom passed 2 years earlier and I did not know Dad updated his deed after Mom died to a Lady Bird deed, transferring the condo to my sister and I equally when he died. This meant we did not have to go to probate court, thank God. It is good to note that the deed immediately updated in the county record system upon his death. And our county allows public searches of these records. His condo was in an over 55 community common in Florida and I lived about 15 minutes away from him. Despite the death being unexpected, I was able to clean out the condo, freshen it up, do some repairs, donate, list and sell items, distribute family pieces to other family members, hire a realtor and list it within 3 weeks of his passing. This was no small feat as I work full time for a tech startup, so many work hours, am a single parent and my sister lives in the Midwest. The first thing I had to do was get the death certificate and deed to submit it to the HOA and security office to have my name and phone number as the owner at the guarded gatehouse, so I would be called when contractors, donation centers and potential buyers went there. The HOA was aware of the death, they had a copy of the certificate. A month after his death, 1 week after the condo went on the market, I get a nasty letter from the HOA demanding proof that I am 55 plus because our community standards rules. I ignored the letter because nothing I would respond with would be productive and I wanted to not make waves when it came time for a buyer to get approved by the HOA. 4 months later we get a buyer, go into contract and she submits her HOA application and we wait. Week 1, week 2, week 3, no response from the HOA. I, my realtor, the buyer's agent and the buyer all call and email asking for an update with no response. Every month I'm paying bills out of his account including HOA fees, renewed property insurance and had to stop over there every few days to make sure all was good. My grief was coming out sideways since I did not really address it. I focused on the estate tasks. I finally had enough. Here are some snippets of the email I sent to the HOA when I again requested an update on the approval. This was the only thing holding up the closing. HOA has absolutely no problem sending a terribly cruel and incentive letter to me asking for proof that my sister and I are over 55 to have the right to own property in this community. Sending that letter so soon after his death, unconscionable. However, your team cannot be bothered to answer emails and return calls. HOA and property management company know that the property was transferred as part of a death because I went to the HOA office to update the owner record and security office, and to do so I had to provide a copy of the death certificate in both instances. Your office knows the unit is on the market because my realtor provided her information to security. There's a lockbox on the door and the security logs shows numerous showings. You know it's on the market because I paid $50 for the budget, financials and HOA documents from your office to give to my realtor. At the time I received the letter, the property was already on the market. My dad passed away on date and I had that condo on the market the first week of May. I have done everything in my power to get it on the market and in contract with an 55 plus year old buyer to stay within your guidelines. Could you personally turn around an estate while grieving so fast? I did, and I'm trying to finalize this last piece of the estate so my family can start closing this open wound. Whomever is monitoring deed transfers needs to do the morally right thing and double check that you are not sending nasty grams to relatives of the deceased so soon, and cross-check to see if that relative is doing their level best to sell the property. A simple realtor or Zillow search will show if it's on the market, or maybe just talk to the people within your office. This is a senior community and I cannot be the first or only executor of an estate that was passed to someone under 55. This cannot be new for this area. Or maybe I am rare seeing as both of my parents are gone before I even turned 44. Please note that my parents did not have a mortgage. This sale is all profit for the estate. I could have put the condo on the market at a lower price that would guarantee a quicker sale, but I did not want to hurt property values and comps for the neighbors surrounding my dad, who, by the way, were very good to both my parents. This buyer is buying it for $90,000 more than my parents did in 2010. You will see that I have not paid the November HOA payment since our closing date should have been in October if your team had turned this around in an appropriate time frame. You can get November's prorated portion of the HOA fee from me and the buyer during the closing. Want your money? Do your job and send the approval letter, and I will be able to complete my job by ensuring someone who is 55 plus owns the property. Those effers sent the letter via email within an hour of my email. No message in the body of the email, just the approval letter attached. The day of closing, I did give the daytime security guard a thank you card with a gift card for all of her help and extra work created by having a ton of businesses and buyers come through the gate. She actually saw me an hour after he died when I ran over there to get items for the funeral home. I will always remember her kindness each time she would see me. Honestly guys, dealing with such a nasty HOA, especially after someone you loved so much passes away, has to be one of the most horrible experiences I can imagine. I feel so sorry for OP that she had to go through all of this. And by the way, before reading this story, I was not aware of age-gated communities in the US. Have you guys ever lived in a community where only people of a certain age are allowed to live? Let us know in the comments. HOA in Arizona forcing teen who lost both parents out of 55 plus community. An Arizona teenager who lives with his grandparents is being forced by the HOA to leave the 55 plus community. The family of Alex Whitbarrow, 15, tells us that their grandson came to live with them after both his parents died 2 weeks apart. It's amazing how one rule is more important than one person's life, said Melody Passmore, grandmother of Whitbarrow. Passmore said she received an HOA letter from her community in Prescott that gives them a deadline of June to find other accommodations for Whitbarrow. We did not plan this. We did not go out one day and say, hey, let's have Clay kill himself and let's have Bonnie die and we will take Alex in, said Passmore, and to heck with the HOA, it's not the way it was planned. Whitbarrow said his transition to Prescott from California has helped him in his grieving, and he said no one is showing compassion. It just seems so heartless that even though we have explained our whole situation, it has to be the rule that dictates everything. It cannot be someone's life, said Whitbarrow. In a letter to the Passmores from the lawyers for the gardens at Willow Creek HOA, they said, "The board must place the interest of all parties involved, not just the Passmores." The Passmores say they moved into the HOA community as their final home 4 years ago. They say Whitbarrow did not enter the home until the end of 2018 after the passing of his parents. In a statement to us, the board said that not enforcing the age requirement could set them up for legal problems. Passmore said they are planning to speak with a real estate agent, but they plan to possibly leave on their own terms. The thought of moving is difficult for the Passmores as they have created their retirement home. Now in their 70s, moving will be hard for them. Passmore had strong words for the HOA and board. "I have stepped in things I find nicer than you people," she said. And guys, as I said, I warned you before, this story is really infuriating and I really can't think of a lot of things that are worse than being forced out of your home when your parents just passed away. I gotta say, I feel really sorry for the person in the story. HOA unfairly fines my aunt for not shoveling her sidewalk. Since it is winter in the northern hemisphere and we are getting our fair share of snow, I have a story from my aunt. My aunt lives in a gated community in the PNW. She is at a higher altitude, so she gets a bit of snow. By the way guys, just to quickly chime in, how much snow have you gotten in 2019? I can basically count the days we have gotten snow on one hand. But anyway, she is a nice lady, very active and always helps other people. Her HOA is a drinking club as she describes them, have a whole bunch of rules, some totally ridiculous, heavily enforced and always changing. Usually when rules are changed, they get posted on some online community bulletin board from the days of dial-up. Also, they like to fine and shame people. My aunt never attended meetings because she has no time for drinking and cigarettes. As per usual, with a lot of bylaws, you have to clear the sidewalk in front of your house of snow and ice. My aunt, being the woman she is and living in a 55+ community, she always shovels her walk and salts it for ice. A couple years ago, there was a heavier than usual snowfall, maybe over 20 inches in the higher elevations, with some warm days, then freezing temperatures for a few days after. So, first snowfall, she gets up early and shovels her sidewalk and her walk and sprinkles down some salt. It snows a few inches more, so in the later afternoon, she shovels the walk again and decides to salt again. She literally said she tossed a few handfuls of salt and the neighbor across the street comes running out demanding she stop salting, and it is a violation of HOA rule whatever crap. It seems that a no salt rule was added to their book of great HOA rules. Reasoning is that salt crystals are unsightly and posted on the unusable online bulletin board from 1999. Which at this point, the online bulletin board had been replaced by an under maintenance error page for the past few months. So there was no way the drunken HOA rule changes could be relayed to the commoners. Well, my aunt apologizes, gets a warning for the first time she salted and a second for the handful of salt she applied in the second salting, and then gets another warning for not properly clearing the sidewalk. Well, my aunt left maybe a strip about 2 to 3 inches for about 2 feet on the edge of her sidewalk, which was not properly cleared of snow. Not a big deal, she made an excellent effort, but the HOA neighbor didn't think so. Next violation would be a fine. Also, she had to clean up all the rock salt with a broom. My aunt ended up getting the new HOA rules in writing from the HOA neighbor, which she read over and realized they only stated salt in the sidewalk snow shoveling rule, but nothing that blue salt-free ice melt. Also was stated that the sidewalk should stay free of ice at all times. Also, she read a bit deeper to learn that street and sidewalk cleaning is covered by the HOA twice a year or as needed, instead of risking HOA wrath of fines and some public shaming, because now it is near impossible to prevent the sidewalk from freezing up. She decides she will challenge the vodka-induced reasoning of the HOA and will use the blue non-salt ice melt to keep her sidewalk ice-free. The next day, after an overnight snowfall, she heads to the local hardware store to buy some blue non-salt ice melt, strikes up a conversation with the shop owner about her issue, who recommends these blue ice melting pellets and throws in a bag of clay kitty litter on the house so she can stick it to them idiots. That afternoon, the temp rises just above freezing and there is a heavy wet snowfall of a few inches which hits the ground wet, melts and refreezes when temperatures go below freezing at nighttime. So instead of risking having a skating rink for a sidewalk, she clears the wet snow and then dumps a bunch of these blue ice melting pellets and a whole bunch of kitty litter. Overnight it freezes. Next day she has the most ice-free sidewalk in all of the neighborhood and it is covered in ice melt pellets. Well, it rains that day. Her use of kitty litter and blue ice melt pellets don't go unnoticed by HOA neighbor. That afternoon she is fined by the HOA officer in charge of fines for breaking rule, vodka section, stale cigarette smoke. She sees nothing wrong. The road is salted and sanded and looks like a mess, so her sidewalk does not look too bad, all blue and grey speckled and ice free. Then she gets a notice to clean up the salt, which she ignores because it is not salt she's using to de-ice her sidewalk, but blue salt-free ice melt pellets and clay kitty litter. Then that day it rained, then froze and continued to rain, then snow, causing everything to be covered in ice and snow the next morning. It was a disaster. My aunt cleared the snow from her sidewalk and applied more blue pellets and kitty litter, which was not a task because luckily she already had applied so much that there was already no ice on her sidewalk or snow. Everyone else in the neighborhood had to chip the underlayer of ice after they risked a horrific fall while clearing the top layer of snow. She then was fined again, while neighbors had to actually walk in the messy street in some parts because sidewalks in some spots were unwalkable. Warnings and fines were given to other unsuspecting neighbors who could not attend the HOA booth meetings and had mistakenly used salt or had not chipped and cleared all the sidewalk ice in an acceptable amount of time. The next few days were blue skies and below freezing with ice everywhere. Sidewalks had been chipped but iced up over time with a thin layer of slick ice called black ice. People were falling and my aunt now had a couple rogue neighbors using all types of non-salt ice melt. One guy made a solution of brine and molasses, which he sprayed on and got great results. Others used sand, brine, non-salt ice melters, and even 15 gallons of wine, which turned to vinegar, was applied. The HOA's alcohol consumption probably increased as the officer fell on a patch of black ice out front of his home, breaking his elbow while returning from delivering fines, warnings, and general nastiness. Eventually, the weather returned to above freezing levels and rain, which washed away all the various ice-melting substances. The rogue neighbors gathered at my aunt's house enjoying tea and snacks. Amongst them was the man who used brine and molasses, who happened to have a license to practice law and was retired with nothing else better to do than to ruin drunk useless HOA at the next meeting. He then invited himself to the next meeting with a file folder of all the fines and warnings with a statement of dispute for each one. Also brought his tablet to prove the online bulletin board was not working, which helped the case that the HOA was not providing proper means of communication to the residents, which meant the residents could sign a petition to fire the standing HOA members and appoint an interim HOA till the election. My aunt was appointed treasurer, found the previous regime spent HOA funds at the liquor store, the retired lawyer president who then went after the previous HOA for funds spent on booze, and of course, they lived happily ever after. By the way guys, after this heavy HOA story and the living happily ever after, I'm curious to know what are your favorite fairy tales? Also, I'm really curious if any of my American viewers like German fairy tales. So let us know in the comments. And if you have watched until here, please don't forget to post some star emojis in the comments and also like the video if you want to support me. And by the way, I just noticed once again that around 60% of my viewers are not subscribed to my channel. Obviously guys, that's not very nice of you, and if you continue to do that, I might turn into Karen. And of course I would have to not only contact the manager, but also corporate. And trust me guys, you don't want that. But anyway, let's continue with the stories. The next one is titled, HOA Does Not Seem to Learn. To start, this is a story about the aunt of a friend of mine. I've been to her home and seen the mess that seems to come out of this, as it is an amusing situation. I did get permission to post this though. For the backstory, the aunt and her husband inherited the house right after they had married from her husband's grandfather, who had died before the wedding. Then they moved in, I believe in the early 70s. It was a large farm that her husband used for horses, with the larger fields being rented off to a neighboring farm for use and handling the hay fields for them. They got a small amount of money from it and hay for the horses that they did not need to get together. Two things happened that led to the next step. The neighboring farm went out of business, one of the owners had a stroke and they moved to Florida, closing it for retirement. And the aunt's husband died of cancer. At the same time, there were businesses and more moving nearby, so she was not that surprised when a developer approached her to try buying the property. She did not entirely end up selling, but sold most of it and getting a deal that reduced what she would get for it, but gave some pretty good perks. The first was the basics, that they would get the sewage and other utilities and roads hooked up. At the time they had a septic system and well water. She still has well water because those rights remained with her, but the big thing was that she would have free access to any shared/common areas and assets the community would have with their planned HOA stuff. Namely, the parks and pools along with the golf course they had planned perpetually. The HOA would have no control over her property and she would have a non-voting advisory position on the board. He has not really bothered other than to pop up when they attempt to give her violations. Those agreements would also pass on to her heirs if it was inherited or to those she sold it to. If she was foreclosed on, the HOA could buy the property and bring it in if they wanted, but that was not something that ever happened as of yet. She is still there now. That was part of the contract, and it was not until after the developers left and turned the HOA over to the residents that issues started. Though that was a couple years later. My friend and his sister moved in with their aunts for a while due to one parent being military and the other being a nurse on a 2 days off to 1 day on schedule. Their mother moved in with the aunt as well, but that schedule was not one they saw her all that often. And the sister was obsessed with the plastic flamingos they had seen on a vacation, so the aunt bought a couple and put them in one of her gardens. And 3 days later, the HOA decided to send her a violation for it, thus starting the mess that the aunt seems to enjoy egging on. They have no rights to force the issue and cannot really do anything to her. She likes to make their disagreements and pushes buttons. Last I visited, there were a few hundred flamingos and a veritable army of lawn gnomes surrounding the house, with a barn, a workshop and a garage on an island-like hill in the center of what looks like a cookie-cutter subdivision. But it seems like part of the HOA is in on the joke, and whenever there is a new election, someone gets the bright idea to try enforcing the rules only for more things to pop up. I'm aware that some of my ripe stars really like gardening, so I'm curious if any of you also have these weird gnomes in their gardens, because quite frankly, I think my grandma has a few of them as well, and I think they are kind of creepy. And for the last part of the video, we are gonna look at some nice pictures and artworks from Ripe Stories, aka our own subreddit on Reddit. And we are going to be starting with something absolutely amazing posted by No, I'm not gonna even try that. It was posted by user Donna. And if you ask me, that is absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much for that. I'm not even really able to express in words how much that means to me. If you guys also like Donna's style of drawing, you can visit her on the website DeviantArt under the username FableSpinner, if I read that correctly on the little picture. And I forgot to read, the text on the picture says, "Thanks for all your hard work. I listen every day, so here is a black kitten for you." And yes, Donna, you're absolutely right. I love black kittens and black cats in general. Next one was posted by CoolWhip6937 and it says, "Can I speak to the manager of Iran? Let's hope Karen does not start World War III." And the next one was posted by AutoDocDagged, which is, by the way, a very interesting name, and it says, "Tiger Lily will keep all secrets. She says thanks to the Ripe folks and Happy New Year to all." And as you can see, I have quite a sizable backlog. I'm so sorry guys for not reading much more Ripe stories, but I have to admit I've really been busy the last couple of weeks. Please forgive me for that. And the next one is also from the same user and once again shows Tiger Lily, who is obviously a loyal Ripe listener. And the last one is a picture from Stacy Rose, and it does not really have to do much with our stories, but as you can see, Stacy is incredibly talented when it comes to drawing and also writing stories. That is two things I pretty much suck at, so props to you. But anyway guys, this has to be the end of the video for now, and I know you hate when I say that, but I have to. So all in all, I hope you enjoyed today's video, and if you did, please don't forget to give me a like to push me through that damn YouTube algorithm. So I hope you have a fantastic day, and I see you again tomorrow.